Well, good morning. Welcome back to the homestead. Yes, that is snow on the ground behind me. Welcome to crazy northern Illinois late winter springtime. It was, I think it got up to 61, 62 degrees yesterday. Then, yeah, it snowed a little last night. Got down to like 15. It was 18 degrees when I woke up. We're up to like 23 now, so we're making progress. Supposed to be upper 30s today. But yeah, just showing you how crazy it was out here. Running into stuff. This is how our winter spring has been going. That's right, that's kale growing. I don't know if you can see that right there, right where Bean is making his appearance again. We left some kale in the ground from last year that we kind of just experimented throwing it in there. Yeah, so it's been warm enough. The kale's been growing, been thriving, and then now we have snow on the ground and like 15 degrees last night. Obviously kale's a cold hardy plant, but yeah, it's crazy. If you live in northern Illinois, northern Midwest, you're kind of used to these spring, late winter swings. I think we have more seasons where you're wearing shorts in the morning and putting your winter coat on at night than we do with normal weather. But we're going to get back on the fencing project today, finish up, well, don't know if we're going to finish, but get working on the goat paddock, get those the corners in using the corner bracing and all that. We'll go over the different systems that I have in use and which ones I'm using today. We'll get those post pounded in. I don't know if we'll get to stretching any wire today or not. Might be a second part, but we'll see where we get. Goats. You can see our goats. So here we are back by the goat paddock. We're gonna get going on our fencing here. Just like to show them off every once in a while. They're a little more interesting than I am. Don't talk as much, but there they are. So what we're going to be using over here today is pretty simple. We got our corner system, our wedge locks like we talked about in our last video. So these ones you'll see a little bit more in detail once we start using them. And all else I got here is a regular flathead screwdriver and good old handy post pounder. That's it. That's all we're going to need for doing what we're doing. Everything slides in pretty simple. Just use a screwdriver to bend a few tabs to help lock stuff in place, and then obviously the post pounder to pound some fence posts down into the ground. Like I said, it was 60 some degrees yesterday. Got pretty cold last night, but hopefully the ground didn't freeze up too much to get those posts in there. So we're going to see how that works out here. Got our curious mama and baby. Yes, really very inventive names, but one's the mom, one's the baby. We couldn't think of anything better, and then we called them that so long it's kind of stuck. I honestly don't know if they really know their names or not, but that's what we're going to stick with because that's what we've called them for a few months now. So there they are. Going to give them a little bit more room. You can see the paddock they got right now. I don't know the dimensions of it or anything. It's not too big. So we're going to give them some more room to graze during the summer, and then I'll separate it out with some T-posts and cattle panels, kind of make it a more of a rotational grazing thing where a paddock can grow back up a little bit while they eat down one and close that one off and let another one grow up. So we'll see how that works out. You got Bean back again. He kind of hangs out with the goats sometimes, plays with them. The other day we let him out in the yard and they were chasing him around. He chased them around. It was kind of funny. Never really seen cats and goats interact like that before. But let's get going on this fencing. Let me show you the other corner system that I have used. Talked about there, you got the wedge lock there that we used. The other one here, you can see these orange. It's called Lockjaws. Those ones are a little harder to find. I ordered some off of Amazon, I believe, and then one of our farm stores. Our local ones didn't have them in stock. One about an hour away had some in stock. Same company, Farm and Fleet. But one store had them and one didn't. I had to drive a bit to get them. You can see these ones are plastic, and you can see they're corner system here is like a round collar, and it goes around the post. It didn't snap in all the way. I don't know. Some of these posts I'm using are old, so they might be slightly different dimensions than the new ones you'll get. So I just put some wire. I don't know if you can see that really well. See how I tied some wire around to keep that collar on there? Just as insurance. I didn't know if it was going to stay or not. So that's what I did there. So they have different advantages. You can see the wedge lock system in place here, and this is basically what we're going to be doing. So this was a 90-degree angle coming here and going off the other direction. You'll see the one I put in a little bit better too. So these were great because you can see the collars on these are square, so you can put the brackets on one of the four sides. But obviously you're relegated to 90-degree angles with the wedge lock system. I like the fact that they are metal, so a little more robust. Don't have to worry about stuff cracking or anything. But like I said, you're limited to 90 degrees. These ones are plastic. They lock in there pretty good. And I like how well they snap onto the T-post here, but you can see there's a little wiggle there. This fence isn't super tight. I might tighten this part up in the future. Right now all it's doing is keeping the goats in. It's not really having to keep cattle out or anything, so I'm not super concerned about how tight it is. The fence going the other direction here though is fairly tight, so that's pretty good. But the advantage of these lockjaw systems is the round collar. You can go on different angles. I don't know if I can get this. Yeah, sorry about my camera work here. I'm just using my iPhone and only have one of them. So you can see my different angles of fencing. So we got one fence coming in here, going off that direction. That's my 90 degree. That's what I'm using the wedge lock for. This angle, I only put one on here. I don't have another one going off the other direction since we already had the wedge lock. But with the lockjaw here, you can see that fence is going off at an angle, roughly 45 degrees. So having the round collar, you can put your brace at any angle that you want, which works great for having those weird non-45 degree angles. You can see, I don't know if you guys can see way up there in the corner, right up there. That one is now at, it was a little wider than 45 degrees. I originally had wedge lock on there, the metal ones that we will be using today, and it's kind of like a wider angle. It's about 60 degrees spread out a little bit. So when I had the wedge lock, they could only do the 45, so there was space between the braces, these angle brace, and the fence. There was a gap in there, and the goats or whatever could kind of get in between the fence and the bracing and trip, and I didn't really like that, so I did put a lockjaw system in there I could go out to the 60 degree angle. Here I can do the 45 degree angle. So if you have weird funky angles, these are your best option if you're going to be using any kind of T-post system and don't want to put wood post into the ground. So these are awesome for the different angles. Like I said, they're plastic. I don't know about their longevity. I've had these up for a year or so and they're holding up fine. Like I said, I put a little bit of wire around them to kind of hold that collar in place. And then, like I say, you see a little bit of wiggle here if your fence isn't super tight and it's not pulling that direction on them too much. These are lock jaws as well. These ones I've been able to find everywhere. They're, because this is a hot wire. Obviously it's not on right now or else I'd be letting you know. But these ones are great for going around your T-posts because, once again, these are round. So you can see kind of the yellow ones down the road there. Those ones are the ones that just snap on. You can only put your wire in one spot. These lockjaw ones, these orange ones, are round. You can put the wire in one spot, but if there's any kind of angle or whatever, it kind of helps it wrap around a little bit. and gives you a little more insulation so your hot wire isn't grounding out on your T-post. So I do prefer the lockjaw insulators over any of the other insulators because it gives you that more room for air, lets you go around corners. It gives you a little bit more insulation where even if something's leaning up against it, you can see when I do that. This hot wire is still only hitting plastic, it's not hitting any metal. If it was one of those yellow ones where the wire only goes in one spot, yeah, there's a little bit of a collar, but there's more room to kind of get around it and hit the metal. So these are awesome if you're using T-posts and any kind of electrical fence. It gives you a little bit more insulation. But now that I've explained the two systems, you kind of be seeing me use them. So let's get a better angle on this 45-degree corner here. So what you have is you have your collar that goes around your T-post. They call it a wedge lock because you can kind of see right here you have a wedge that goes down between the T-post and the collar and wedges in there and wedges that solid in place, and your little bumps, your studs on your T-post kind of hold it there. Then you have these other collars or brackets that snap, they lock into the collar. They have little tabs you just kind of bend out. See if you can get down in there and see it. It's really hard to see. If you ever pick them up, you'll be able to see it really well, but you kind of see these little notches. The tabs go up into the notch depending on if you're going up or down. Slide up behind it, and then you just take that screwdriver and bend them over, and it locks those collars into place. So my 45 here, I got, now you can see the two. So we got this one running off, and it doesn't really matter what my directions are, but to the east. I got this one running off to the south, so you got your 45-degree angle here. But like I said, you got four sides to these collars. So I have my lockjaw one running at my 45 degrees up the other direction. I got this one that's empty, and it's just a straight shot to where I'm wanting to run my fence here. You can see my line wiggling. So I can get those in there, use this existing collar, just use one of these brackets, snap that in there, and put my bracing here because I'm going to have fence coming through and pulling this way against the angle that's here. Right now the fence that's here is pulling that way, pulling tight. I want another one coming off here in case my fence, when I tighten it up, is pulling the other direction. It's kind of going to be almost like the H brace that you would see in the middle of a long run of fence. We'll get those on. I'll show you as I put that bracket in, and then we will go on to our corner, and then we have the corner with the wood post. I will show you something a little bit different. Like there, you can still use these brackets that lock into the collars. You can use them on the wood post as well. Okay, we're gonna have to excuse the shadows a little bit. It's just the time of day it is. My rabbit shed there in the background, the brown and white's kind of shading out the area we're working in. But we're gonna show you how to get these posts in, how to measure. It's all on the package of the wedge lock. And I should mention I am not sponsored by either one of these companies. They're just what I use, and I want to explain thoroughly how to use the systems to help people out. And speaking of the wedge lock, they have the different, you can see the goats playing around in the background there. Squirrel. But they have different packages. So I bought the corner ones. They have enough brackets and collars to do a full 90-degree corner. They do have them in an H-brace configuration where you have just enough to do an H-brace or an angle brace. They have the angle brace ones. And then they have, so you can do H-brace, a single angle brace, or your corners. So I'm going to have the wood corner and this corner, which is two 45s, which make a 90. So I'm going to use one package of a 90 degree to do my two 45-degree corners, or my two half corners, and then a whole package to do the T-post in the corner. We'll have the full 90 degree both sides. It'll make sense as I go along. And I'll show you how to do the post. It says in the package you put your brace post out so far, and then you have your angle brace, which goes between your two T-posts that are holding the fence. So you put your main brace post that says 12 to 16 inches in from the length of your brace post. So you put your brace post in, just lay it out there to get your distance. Take your T-post, put it 12 to 16 inches in from the end of your brace here. I go at the top of the little spade, whatever you want to call it there, that sticks it in the ground. That gives you somewhere between the 12 and 16 inches. So that's what I use. All you do then is you can face this post any way you want, but since the wire is going to be on this outside, I'm going to have the outside of the post there so that we can use any corners of that wedge lock. So once you get your spacing right, you just take your post, your driver, right, don't want to go any farther than that because that's not going to leave me any room for my hot wire and my barbed above my woven. It's kind of going to be a weird, try to get it where you can see what I'm doing here. You can see my brace post right here. So this one, we're putting the collar down at the base of the post because we're going to have one of these brackets angled up to get our 60-degree angle or whatever it is going up to the other corner posts there. So these, you don't want to lock these in place till you get them on and get your brace post in, the angle post, because you kind of have to adjust it up and down. And since this one here in the corners already installed and kind of permanent, where this is the one we're going to be adjusting. So all you do is slide your collar on, let it fall down, and then get you guys down here with me. You take your angle bracket, and you can see your little tabs here, your slots. You got your tabs on the back. Those just slide right down into those notches. And then you can take your screwdriver and kind of get in there and bend those tabs out. It's not such a big deal on the bottoms here because they're going down into the notch, and then you got your post in there, which is going to push it down in farther. It's your upper ones. You can still slide it up here and get that in there. It's the ones on the upper side. They're going from the bottom up, so you really do want to bend those and get those tabs bent into the notch and lock that in place. So right now we're going to leave that loose where we can slide it around where we want it. This is your wedge. You can kind of see it's in the shape where the T-post slides in there. It's open on this end. That goes around the back side here of your post. Slides up and down on that. And I'll just kind of show you. You got these little bumps on the top that keep it from going down too far. It'll slide down inside of your collar here and lock it into place. You might have to use a hammer. I didn't grab one. I'll have to grab one when I lock this one in. But that slides down inside, and that's why they call it a wedge lock. The wedge locks this collar into place where it doesn't move. But right now we want this one to move so we can get our angle brace. So I'll get you back here where you can kind of see me putting in that angle brace. Like I said, the top one is already permanent, so we're not going to be able to move that one, so we want that bottom one to move. So here's the top brace. Get you where you can see me putting that one in. Excuse me, fighting a little bit of a cold still. Kids bring all sorts of things home from school. See the little tabs. Here's my notch. It's going to be going down, so you got to come up from the bottom with your tabs and slide them into that. And since gravity's wanting to pull that down, you definitely want to bend these tabs around that notch to lock this one into place, because gravity is fighting against you there. Once your post is in, it does kind of push up, but better safe than sorry. You don't want to be coming out and going, why is my fence all loose? So now we have our fixed one, this one, the top, into place. We're going to put the brace, angle brace in there. I'm trying to get you in a spot where you're not going to fall over. Watch the goats button heads there. Yeah, you're going to get your horn stuck again. Good job. So these angle braces, I do the same thing. I put it with the knobs out towards where the fence is going to be. So here's an issue I have run into. This one is not high enough for where I have my base. Sometimes you kind of just got to play around a little bit. So I used this as my measurement for my 16 to 12 inches, but because I already had this other one in, it's kind of nice when you can adjust both sides. I can't adjust this bottom post, so it's going too far in your way behind this one. So I'm going to have to pull this post, move it over this direction a little bit, and that will give me some room to move that around. So between the 12 and 16, I should have been a heck of a lot closer to 12 than to 16. You will get to see me use a post puller now, which is, if you're doing anything with T-post, is a must-have. People have shown how to use, seen people use the pounder to pull them. There's a lot easier way with this post puller. Okay, here we got our post puller. I slid that collar and bracket off. Gonna get this angle post out of the way. If you are doing anything with T-post, one of these is a must-have. It's got a chain if you even need to wrap around a wood post and pull it, but it's great. Got this little part, comes down, it's got a notch in there, goes around the post. Then you got your leverage here just to pull it right up out of the ground. Place your base right near the bottom of the post. Try to lock that down underneath one of the knobs. And then you just pull up on it. Ratchet your way down. Pull it up all the way out of there. There you go. Excuse the farm noises in the background, but this is a farming homesteading channel. You're gonna get them. You're gonna have chickens, children, and we're kind of on a main highway, so you'll have car noise too. We got the post moved now. I got the bracket back on the bottom, so we're gonna slide those in, and then I'll show you putting in the wedge to lock it in place. What we're going to do is pop the bottom in here into that bracket. Then we're going to slide it up until the top of the post locks into the top of the bracket up there. And that's going to give us where we want this bottom one to be locked in. I'm going to just use my leg to hold it up there. Put that wedge in the back. Sometimes you kind of got to take that post out and just remember where you need to be. There, I didn't even need the hammer now. Wedged, put the wedge in the back. Give you guys a closer look at that. So this wedge slides right in the back of the collar and locks down into place. There's a little bit of wiggle on there, which is good because you're going to need it when you put your angle brace in. You need to be able to slide it around a little bit, and you kind of got to muscle it in sometimes to get it where you want it. Once you get your fence on there though, it doesn't move around so much. It's a lot easier when the ground isn't so hard as well, because you're not fighting frozen ground. You have a little bit more wiggle room to get everything in there. Real life, you're seeing me as I do it. I'm not doing multiple takes. Even though for your sake, I may have to edit a bit of this out because you don't want to watch me struggle with this for 20 minutes. Get that top back up in there. Get that bottom bracket on. Move that collar up into place. Make sure you got it all locked in there. Then we'll try to get this wedge back in there. Post is kind of fighting the back, moving the collar around, so that wedge isn't wanting to slide in as easy as it looked the first time. That's where we might need to use the hammer. Alright, now that's in place. So now you can see I can't move this outside post in at all because it's now wedged up against this brace post. Yeah, there's a little wiggle in that. That's fine because your force is all going into the base down here where it's in the ground. So that's what's going to give your corner its stability and its strength for when the wire's pulling on it. So now we got this single part in, we can move on to the actual corner. Here we are at the actual full corner we're going to be doing. So how I'm going to do this is, you saw the struggles on the last one with one part being permanent and the other you kind of have to adjust a little bit. The first part's really easy, the one side whenever you're getting that set, because you can wiggle both sides and get your spacing fine. So what I'm going to do is do that one side, then we'll go to the other and do what I did the first time, well, did the second time on the first end, is once we get this angle brace in where I want it, that side will be permanent, so we will kind of use the angle of the angle brace to adjust where I need to pound that other corner brace post in. So do the one, you can use your 12 to 16 inch spacing because you have adjustability either end. Second one, put in, get your upper collar's not going to move at that point, so kind of hold your angle brace in there at the angle and adjust where you're going to pound it in as needed. I'm not going to show you pounding everything in, you just saw that. So, but once I get the corners in, I'll show you putting in especially the upper bracing in the 90 degrees here. Okay, you can see I got my one angle brace in here. This is the upper one. I wasn't able to show you doing the upper bracket on the other side since it was already in place. So we got our one going down here. We're going to have another one running off this way. It's going to be easier to lock this in place now because you're really not going to have adjustability once you get this one where you want it. It's where you want it. You can't adjust this for the other post, otherwise this will be falling out and everything. So now that that's in, We're just going to put our collar in the same as we did at the lower. See, it slides right on the back. And just wiggle it on in there. Usually, there. That one I didn't have to use a hammer on. What I'm figuring out is I'm running into on some of these posts, they're used. A lot of them. Some of them are new, some of them are used. Some are old, like antique old. So they're not the same spec dimensions. Some have a little lip on the back side here, which makes the collar sliding up and down and the wedge sliding up and down a little bit of a pain. That's why I had to use the hammer on that other side. And this dimension here is slightly different too. So these are designed for modern, new T-post. If you're like me though, you're going to use what you get to save some money and be frugal, because I mean, maybe even if you can't afford all brand new, you can do a heck of a lot more if you're not spending all that money on brand new and using free or used, less expensive items. So that's one thing I'm running into, but you can see I got that one in. We'll put in our other brace, our other bracket here for the other direction. Now that that's in, I can just bend those tabs, get it locked into place, and we'll do exactly the same thing we did earlier. Kind of get our angle figured out where I'm going to go pound that other T-post in for the bracing based on where that angle is going to end up, and then that will be our 90-degree corner. And then there's a little bit different thing you do when you're going from a T-post for your brace to your corner, that's the wood. We'll show that after I get this one wrapped up. Okay, I'm going to show you something here before I put this corner brace all the way in, this angled brace. Got the base bracket in, got this upper one in. What's nice about this when you don't have any fencing up already is you have some play in this corner post. See, once the fencing is on there, that's what draws it all nice and tight. Up until that, which I didn't have on the other side since I already had some fencing there, you have a little bit of play to be able to work your corner, your angle brace in here. So I get that locked in the bottom. You can kind of push this one back a little bit and it locks in there. So you got to be careful that you're not bumping this and having them fall out. But all this is to do is once you get your wire on here, it's going to be pulling this corner in towards me. You can see I can't budge that. So the wire is going to be pulling at this way and this way. It's going to pull this nice and tight. And that's where you get the lock for your post here. That's what locks it in tight, is your wire once it's on there. But until then, you got a little bit of wiggle room. Also keep in mind as you're putting in these brace posts, and once we get all the brace posts in, we'll pound in all the in-between ones, whatever spacing you prefer. That's not really going to make a great video, just pounding in a bunch of posts. But keep in mind, keep them lined up with whatever string you're in, your straight line. So even when you're doing these corners, the corners are your foundation for the rest of your fence. Make sure you keep them lined up with your straight line that you did, both on these sides and then at your ends, and then keep that in place as you pound in your in-between post, your line post. Keep that all nice and straight so you have a good looking fence, but more importantly, a working fence. Here's another thing I want to show you guys about the lock jaws for the insulators, especially if we're going to be doing a bunch of T-post stuff like this. So the old-fashioned, you can see it back there on that wood post, those yellow plastic insulators, the ones that are made for the T-post, you have to have your T-post oriented this right way to snap those on, like this one is. So that they work in this configuration just like the regular old yellow insulators. What's nice about these ones is they can snap on when you have something like this. If you're doing the kind of projects we're doing here, sometimes your T-posts are not always aligned exactly with the knobs out. These are facing the other way. I could have done it the other way, but when I did it, I faced it that way for some reason. But the nice thing about these is it still snaps on sideways, and you can still run your hot line through there. So that's really nice about using those ones. So I would recommend if you're going to be using insulators on T-post, to use those Lockjaws ones if you can find them. I'm sure they're on Amazon, but your local farm store might have them as well. So what we're going to be doing different up here, you can already see I did it down here with this T-post. We're going to be putting in a brace here. So ideally, if you didn't have all this extra wire on your wood post, you'd be able to. So what we're going to do here, since we already have wire in place, we're going to have to like screw it in where we want it. Ideally, if you didn't have this wire in place, you could get your T-post, your brace post in place and adjust where you wanted this one to, because it's easy to screw in where you want. But since all this wire is in place, I don't want it ending up right where I got this wire. So what we're going to do is take some wood screws. I just used the decking screws. I'm using 2.5 inch. Should be plenty. Screw that in to the post where you want it. And we'll show you that. I do all 4 sides. We're going to screw it in right here because that's about the only spot we have open, and some of this fencing that's in place already kind of help brace it. But you just do one on each side, one on the top, one on the bottom, and it holds that in place against your wood post. You can see I do have a gate on this post. It's not going to stay there. If it were to stay there, I probably wouldn't be bracing with the T-post. I probably would put a wood post in with the cross brace and the wire, to strain wire and all that to get it nice and tight. But that's going to be a different day, a different video. I need to replace the post on the other side where I ideally want the gate hinged. It's rotted out and it's not in the ground very well, so we'll be ripping that one out, putting a new one in, putting the gate on that side. So this isn't going to be staying here, so it's not going to be as big a deal. It's how firm this is in bracing. But like I said, if this were to stay here, that gate's going to kind of pull away even with the wire. I don't know if I'd use this system ideally with a gate, because the heavy gate, it's like a probably 12-14 foot gate. It's going to be really pulling that other way. And like you can see where I was doing the other corners, the T-post can pull right out of these. If it gets pulled too far that way, it shouldn't with the wire, but better safe than sorry. So let's slap this up here. You can see that. Then everything else is the same. Put your T-post in. I'm going to do this one where I put it in, kind of get the angle, then pound in my brace post. You can see I'm not putting the screws all the way in. I'm leaving them out 3/4 to an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, to hold that so it doesn't wiggle back and forth side to side. This one here, you can kind of put through in the middle. You'll see the hole in there. That'll hold it in place from falling down. And then you just got to put one on the top. You got to put one on the top to keep it from getting pushed up. Get that locked down. And once you get your T-post in there, it's really going to push up against it, kind of keep it where you want it. So it's going to be a little loose, a little floppy right now until you get your T-post in there. But then that should lock it into place. And if you always have to readjust after you get it in there, pop your screws out, put them back where you need them. So you can see we got this wrapped up. Sorry, I do not have a level spot to get my tripod on out here, and it's not one that's self-leveling. This is technically our neighbors, but Castle Rock State Park, that's why we're Castle Rock Farm and Homestead. It's called Castle Rock because if you go up the road just a little bit, there are some cliffs and outlooks and overhangs over the Rock River here in northern Illinois. You can see it's not very level, so it's making it difficult to find places to do things or to find a place for your tripod. getting into doing like our pool. You can kind of see it in the background and stuff. Yeah, we've had to really level out some spots. Luckily the rock isn't up to the top here. It's actually some pretty good dark soil, so great for planting, great for growing, but not great for if you need a level spot. Let's get a closer look at this. Got it locked in at the top, locked in down at the bottom. You can see this one doesn't go all the way to the bottom, so that's your adjustability. You want them close to the bottom because that's where the strength in this post is going to be. If you get it up the top, you can see it wiggles. You don't want those up high. That's why I don't like the H braces for this stuff, because those are going to be up high and you got to really get like maybe a cross wire, or your fencing wire has got to be nice and tight to make sure those stay. This gives you a little bit more room for air. But you can see I did take the screws out and put them back in once I got that where I wanted to really lock that into place so it's not moving too much. Oh, I say that as it pops out, so I'm going to adjust that a little bit. But that's what that looks like. We'll get those rest of those posts pounded in. You can see there's a lot going on here. Got one going off at the 45 here, this one at the 90, and another one coming in at the 90. But that should work. It's for goats. It's not necessarily completely permanent because I don't know if this is going to be here forever, so I don't want to drill down, put a bunch of posts in, cement them in, or whatever I got to do, pull them back up later. This is nice and easy. You saw the T-post puller I used earlier. That makes it easy to pop stuff out if you need to. I'll show you what I did here to fix that. Just put another screw in with a couple washers, and that really locked it in nice and tight. So you can do that as well. Got all the line posts in now too, so you kind of get an idea of what this, sorry, sun's in my eyes here, what the idea of what this paddock's going to look like. About same size as the other one they're currently in, maybe slightly larger. So I'm going to separate this into two, the current one into two, let them graze down one, use some cattle panels to make some barricades and some gates. Once they get one grazed down, close it off, open up another. And hopefully I'll let their forage last a little longer. We saw me build the funky hutch. That is for the front where there will be another paddock for, ideally for turkeys, but turkeys really don't need the grass so much. They eat a lot of the bugs and stuff. They eat some grass, but I think I'll let the goats run in there first, use the funky hutch for their hutch in the front of the house. That'll be whole nother video building that one. And then they can graze that down while everything over here recovers. And that would just give us a little extra time, so I'm not feeding so much feed, so much hay. Not so worried when summer comes, because spring and summer this stuff grows like crazy around here. Getting into the fall, sometimes it starts getting a little dry, then obviously winter. But that's the plan. So we will stretch the fence another day, or another video at least, because this one's probably taking long enough. And we'll have another video on that, and then we'll also do a video on placing those posts for that gate that I talked about earlier as well. I have to trim out some of our blackberries and raspberries that are around that fence. I have a cheap little Amazon chainsaw to do that, so we'll see how that thing works as well. Just another note, please like and subscribe. Just help out the channel keep growing. It's doing better than I thought, so that's an encouragement, so please keep it up. Thank you guys.